Marcus Thompson had always believed money could buy him anything. As the son of a wealthy American businessman, he had grown up getting his way through sheer financial power. At 28, he owned 3 luxury cars, a penthouse in Manhattan, and an ego that matched his bank account. His friends often joked that Marcus thought he was royalty himself. The trip to London was supposed to be another adventure where he could show off his wealth and status. Marcus had booked the most expensive hotel suite, hired a private driver, and planned to visit all the places where important people gathered. He wanted photos that would make his social media followers jealous and stories that would impress his business associates back home. On his 3rd day in London, Marcus decided to visit Buckingham Palace. He had heard about the famous guards who stood perfectly still, dressed in their red uniforms and tall black hats. Marcus thought it would be amusing to try to make them react. He had seen videos online of tourists trying to distract the guards, and he wanted to create his own viral moment. Walking through the palace grounds with his expensive camera hanging around his neck, Marcus felt superior to the other tourists. They were taking ordinary photos and following the designated paths like sheep. He was different. He was special. He deserved special treatment wherever he went. As he approached the main gate, Marcus spotted a royal guard standing at attention. The young soldier looked to be in his early 20s with a serious expression and perfect posture. His red uniform was immaculate and his rifle was held precisely at his side. This was exactly what Marcus had been looking for. Marcus approached the guard with a swagger in his step. He had no idea that this seemingly simple encounter would change everything he thought he knew about respect, authority, and consequences. The guard's name was Private James Mitchell, and he had been serving for 2 years. James took his duty seriously and had been trained to handle all kinds of situations with tourists. Other visitors were taking photos from a respectful distance, but Marcus walked right up to the guard. He pulled out his phone and started recording a video. In his mind, he was about to create content that would get thousands of views and make him famous on social media. Marcus began speaking loudly to his phone camera, describing where he was and what he was about to do. Several other tourists stopped to watch, sensing that something interesting was about to happen. Some of them pulled out their own phones, thinking they might witness something worth recording. The atmosphere around the palace gate suddenly became tense. Marcus was oblivious to the change in mood around him. He was too focused on his own performance and the attention he was getting. He had no understanding of the military protocols that governed the guard's behavior or the serious nature of his position. Private Mitchell remained perfectly still, his eyes focused straight ahead. He had dealt with difficult tourists before, but something about this particular visitor made him more alert. There was an arrogance in the man's voice and movements that suggested this interaction might escalate beyond the usual tourist antics. Marcus finished setting up his phone and looked directly at the guard. He was about to make a demand that would trigger a chain of events he never could have imagined. His wealthy background had always protected him from real consequences, but he was about to learn that some situations cannot be solved with money or family connections. The other tourists continued watching, unaware that they were about to witness something that would become the talk of the embassy and reach the highest levels of diplomatic relations between 2 countries. Marcus took a deep breath, smiled confidently at his phone camera, and prepared to make his outrageous demand. Marcus looked directly into his phone camera and spoke with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. "Watch this, everyone. I'm about to show you how things work when you have real influence." He turned toward Private Mitchell and raised his voice so other tourists could hear clearly. "Guard," Marcus shouted, pointing at the young soldier. "I am Marcus Thompson, son of Robert Thompson, who owns Thompson Industries. We have business deals worth millions with British companies. I demand that you give me a proper military salute right now." The tourists around them gasped at his boldness. Some started recording with their phones, sensing they were witnessing something extraordinary. A few older visitors shook their heads in disbelief at the young American's behavior. Private Mitchell remained perfectly still, his training taking over. He had been taught never to react to such provocations, no matter how outrageous. His job was to guard the palace, not to entertain tourists or respond to their demands. Every muscle in his body stayed disciplined and controlled. Marcus waited for a few seconds, then became irritated by the lack of response. "Did you hear me? I said salute me. My family has more money than you'll ever see in your lifetime. I could buy and sell you 10 times over." Show some respect." An elderly British couple standing nearby looked horrified. The woman whispered to her husband, "How can someone be so rude?" Other tourists began moving away from Marcus, embarrassed by his behavior and not wanting to be associated with the scene he was creating. Still, Private Mitchell did not move. His eyes remained focused straight ahead, his breathing steady and controlled. Years of military training had prepared him for exactly this type of situation. He knew that reacting would only encourage more inappropriate behavior. Marcus became increasingly frustrated. Back home, his money and family name opened every door. People jumped to fulfill his requests because they knew the Thompson name carried weight in business circles. This guard's indifference was completely foreign to him. "Fine," Marcus said, his voice getting louder and more aggressive. "Maybe you didn't understand me the first time. I am not some ordinary tourist. I am American royalty, and I deserve the respect that comes with my status. Salute me now, or I will make sure you regret it." The crowd around them had grown larger. Some tourists were clearly uncomfortable and started walking away, but others remained to see how this confrontation would end. A security guard near the palace entrance had noticed the commotion and was slowly walking in their direction. Marcus noticed the approaching security guard and assumed the man was coming to help him get what he wanted. In his experience, authority figures usually sided with wealthy people like him. He had no idea that he was about to face a completely different kind of authority system. Private Mitchell could see the security guard approaching from the corner of his eye, but his focus remained absolute. He had sworn an oath to serve and protect, and that included maintaining the dignity and security of his post regardless of what anyone demanded from him. The security guard arrived just as Marcus was preparing to make an even more outrageous demand. Instead of the support Marcus expected, the guard's expression was serious and concerned. He had heard everything Marcus had said, and he knew this situation needed immediate attention. "Sir," the security guard said to Marcus in a calm but firm voice, "I need you to step back from the royal guard and lower your voice immediately." Marcus turned toward the security guard with surprise and anger. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am? I was just asking for a simple show of respect from your guard here. Is that too much to ask?" The security guard looked at Marcus carefully, taking note of his expensive clothes and arrogant attitude. He had dealt with entitled tourists before, but this situation felt different. The young American's demands were crossing lines that could have serious consequences. Marcus had no idea that his words and actions were being observed by more than just tourists with cameras. Security personnel throughout the area had been alerted to the disturbance, and reports were already being filed about the incident. His demand for a salute was about to trigger a chain of events that would reach far beyond the palace gates. The security guard, Officer David Reynolds, had 20 years of experience dealing with difficult situations at royal properties. He could immediately tell that Marcus was not just an ordinary troublesome tourist. There was something particularly dangerous about his entitled attitude and complete disrespect for protocol. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time to step away from the guard and stop making demands," Officer Reynolds said firmly. "The royal guards are not here for your entertainment, and they do not salute tourists regardless of who they claim to be." Marcus laughed dismissively and pulled out his phone to show the security guard something. "Look, here's my father's business website. Thompson Industries. We do $30 million in business with British companies every year. I think that earns me a little respect around here." Officer Reynolds glanced at the phone but remained unmoved. "Sir, I don't care if your family does business with the entire country. What you're doing right now is inappropriate and potentially illegal. You need to leave this area immediately." The crowd of tourists continued to grow. Many of them were recording the confrontation with their phones, and some were already uploading videos to social media. Marcus noticed the attention and seemed to enjoy it, not realizing that the videos would soon cause him serious problems. "Illegal?" Marcus laughed again. "What's illegal about asking for respect? In America, important people get the recognition they deserve. Maybe you British need to learn some customer service skills." Officer Reynolds felt his patience wearing thin. He had dealt with rude tourists before, but Marcus's combination of arrogance and ignorance was extraordinary. The young American seemed to have no understanding of where he was or what he was doing. Private Mitchell continued to stand perfectly still throughout the entire confrontation. His training had taught him that the best response to such situations was no response at all. But inside, he was carefully observing everything and preparing to act if the situation became physically threatening. Marcus suddenly had another idea. He reached into his expensive leather wallet and pulled out several $100 bills. "Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot," he said to Officer Reynolds. "Here's $500. Just tell your guard to give me a quick salute for my video and we'll call it even." The offer of money shocked the watching tourists even more than his previous demands. Several people audibly gasped and an elderly gentleman muttered, "Absolutely disgraceful behavior." Officer Reynolds stared at the money in disbelief. In his 20 years of service, no one had ever tried to bribe him so openly and casually. Marcus's complete misunderstanding of the situation was almost incredible to witness. "Sir, are you seriously trying to bribe a British security officer?" Reynolds asked, his voice now carrying a tone of warning that Marcus completely missed. "Put your money away immediately and prepare to leave the premises." Marcus looked confused by the rejection of his offer. "It's not a bribe, it's just a tip for good service. Come on, everyone wins here. Your guard gets to do his job, I get my video, and you get some extra cash. What's the problem?" At that moment, Officer Reynolds made a decision that would change everything for Marcus. He pressed a button on his radio and spoke quietly into his communication device. Within minutes, additional security personnel would arrive, and the situation would escalate beyond anything Marcus could imagine. Marcus noticed the radio call, but assumed it was routine. He had no idea that Officer Reynolds was calling for backup, because he now considered the American tourist to be a potential security threat. The combination of demands, disrespect, and attempted bribery had crossed multiple lines. "While we're waiting," Marcus said casually, "maybe you could explain to your guard that cooperation is good for international relations. My father knows several members of Congress, and they wouldn't appreciate hearing that British security was rude to American visitors." Officer Reynolds looked at Marcus with something approaching amazement. The young man seemed to live in a completely different reality where money and family connections could solve any problem and overcome any law or regulation. 2 additional security officers appeared within minutes, walking quickly toward the group. Marcus saw them coming and smiled, still believing they were there to help him get what he wanted. He had no idea that his name was already being reported up the chain of command to people who took threats to royal security very seriously. The 2 additional security officers approached with serious expressions. Officer Sarah Chen and Officer Michael Hayes had been briefed on the situation through their radios and knew they were dealing with someone who had made threats and attempted to bribe palace security. "Mr. Thompson," Officer Reynolds said formally, "these officers are here to escort you off the palace grounds. You have violated several protocols and created a security concern." Marcus looked shocked. "Security concern? What are you talking about? I just wanted a simple salute. You're all acting like I threatened the Queen or something." Officer Chen stepped forward and spoke in a calm but authoritative voice. "Sir, you have demanded special treatment from royal security, attempted to bribe an officer, and made references to political connections in what appears to be an intimidating manner. These actions require us to file an official report." The crowd of tourists was now substantial, with dozens of people recording everything on their phones. Marcus finally began to realize that the situation was not going his way, but he still believed his family's influence would protect him from any real consequences. "Look, officers, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Marcus said, trying to sound more reasonable. "I'm staying at the Langham Hotel in the Churchill Suite. That's a $1,500 a night room. I'm clearly not some troublemaker. I'm just an American businessman trying to have some fun." Officer Hayes had heard enough. "The price of your hotel room is irrelevant to this situation, sir. You need to come with us now for questioning, and we need to see your identification and travel documents." Marcus reluctantly handed over his passport, still confident that his American citizenship would somehow protect him. He had no understanding of how seriously British authorities took threats to royal security, regardless of the nationality of the person making them. Officer Chen examined his passport and spoke into her radio, relaying Marcus's full name and passport number to headquarters. Within minutes, his information would be entered into security databases and shared with the American embassy. "This is ridiculous," Marcus said, his voice rising again. "I want to speak to someone from the American embassy immediately. You can't treat an American citizen this way over something so minor." Officer Reynolds looked at him seriously. "Mr. Thompson, What you consider minor, we consider a matter of national security. Royal Guards are not tourist attractions. They are serving military personnel protecting one of our most important institutions. As the officers prepared to escort Marcus away from the palace grounds, he made one final attempt to use his family's influence. My father knows Senator Williams personally. When he hears about this treatment, there are going to be serious diplomatic consequences. The three security officers exchanged glances. Marcus's continued references to political connections and threats of consequences were only making his situation worse. Every word he spoke was being noted in their reports and would be included in the official documentation of the incident. Private Mitchell had remained perfectly still throughout the entire confrontation, but his presence had been crucial to the developing situation. His professional behavior had highlighted just how inappropriate Marcus's demands had been. As they began walking toward the security office, Marcus suddenly realized that videos of the incident were being uploaded to social media in real time. His phone buzzed with notifications as friends and followers began commenting on the footage that tourists had already shared online. "Wait," Marcus said, panic beginning to creep into his voice. "Those videos make me look bad because they don't show the full context. People are going to misunderstand what happened here." Officer Chen looked at him with something approaching sympathy. "Mr. Thompson, those videos show exactly what happened. You demanded that a Royal Guard salute you, tried to bribe security officers, and made threatening references to political connections. There's no missing context." Marcus was finally beginning to understand that his behavior had been completely unacceptable, but he still had no idea how far-reaching the consequences would be. As they reached the security office, his phone rang with a call from his father back in New York. The officers allowed him to answer the phone, and Marcus could hear his father's angry voice even from a distance. Someone had already sent Robert Thompson the videos from social media, and he was not pleased with his son's representation of the family name. The conversation with his father lasted only 2 minutes, but it was clear that Marcus was receiving no support from home. When he hung up, his face was pale, and his arrogant demeanor had completely disappeared. Within 3 hours of the incident at Buckingham Palace, Marcus found himself sitting in a small windowless room at the American Embassy in London. The security officers had released him after completing their reports, but not before informing him that the matter had been forwarded to diplomatic authorities. Ambassador Patricia Williams, a seasoned diplomat with 30 years of international experience, had been briefed on the situation by both British authorities and her own security team. She was not pleased to be dealing with another case of an entitled American tourist, causing international embarrassment. Marcus sat across from Deputy Ambassador Robert Chang, who had been assigned to handle the initial meeting. The videos from the palace had already been viewed millions of times on social media, and the hashtag #The Royal Guard Salute was trending worldwide. "Mr. Thompson," Deputy Ambassador Chang began, "do you understand why you're here?" Marcus, who had spent the last few hours reading angry comments on social media, nodded slowly. "I think I may have upset some people at the palace, but honestly, I don't understand why everyone is making such a big deal about this." Chang looked at him with disbelief. "You don't understand why demanding military honors from a foreign country's royal guard is a big deal? You don't see why attempting to bribe security officers might be problematic." The reality of his situation was finally beginning to sink in for Marcus. His father had already called 3 times, each conversation more heated than the last. Thompson Industries stock had dropped 2% since the videos went viral, and several British business partners had called to express their concerns. "The British government has filed an official complaint about your behavior," Chang continued. "They're considering you a security risk and want assurances that you understand the severity of your actions." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Security risk? But I never threatened anyone. I just wanted a salute for a video." Chang pulled out a tablet and showed Marcus the reports from the palace security officers. "According to these documents, you made repeated demands for special treatment, offered bribes to law enforcement, and made threatening references to political consequences if your demands weren't met." Reading the official reports, Marcus realized how his words and actions appeared to people who didn't know him. What he had intended as showing off his family's importance had been interpreted as potentially threatening behavior by people trained to identify security risks. "The videos have been picked up by news outlets in 12 countries, Chang said. The headline on BBC News is, "American Tourist Demands Royal Salute, Offers Bribes to Security." CNN is calling it "Entitled American Embarrasses Nation at Buckingham Palace." Marcus buried his face in his hands. His social media accounts had gained thousands of followers, but they were all there to mock him. The comment sections were filled with people from around the world expressing disgust at his behavior. Ambassador Williams entered the room at that moment, her expression stern and professional. Marcus recognized her immediately from news coverage and felt intimidated by her presence. "Mr. Thompson," she said without sitting down, "your behavior has created a diplomatic incident between our countries. The British government is questioning our commitment to teaching American citizens proper respect for their institutions and laws." Marcus tried to speak, but Ambassador Williams held up her hand to stop him. "I've been doing this job for 3 decades, and I've never seen someone create so much international embarrassment with such a simple act of stupidity." The ambassador sat down and looked directly at Marcus. "The British authorities have agreed not to pursue formal charges against you on one condition. You must make a public apology that acknowledges the inappropriateness of your behavior and shows genuine understanding of why your actions were wrong." Marcus felt relieved that he might avoid criminal charges, but the idea of a public apology terrified him. What kind of public apology? Like a statement to the press? "The British government wants you to return to Buckingham Palace tomorrow morning," Ambassador Williams explained. "You will apologize to Private Mitchell, the guard you harassed, in front of the same tourists and media who witnessed your original behavior." The thought of facing all those cameras and people again made Marcus feel sick. But as he looked at the serious faces of the diplomatic officials, he realized he had no choice. Chang leaned forward. "Mr. Thompson, you need to understand that this apology cannot be half-hearted or defensive. It needs to show genuine remorse and understanding of why your behavior was unacceptable." Marcus nodded slowly, finally beginning to grasp the magnitude of what he had done. His moment of arrogance at the palace had created an international incident that threatened business relationships and diplomatic ties between two allied nations. The next morning, Marcus stood outside Buckingham Palace with dozens of news cameras pointed at him. Representatives from BBC, CNN, Sky News, and media outlets from around the world had gathered to witness his public apology. The scene was far more intense than anything he had imagined. Ambassador Williams stood beside him along with Deputy Ambassador Chang and a British government representative. Private Mitchell, the guard Marcus had harassed the day before, stood at attention in his dress uniform, maintaining the same professional composure he had shown during the original incident. Marcus had spent most of the night writing and rewriting his apology with help from embassy staff. Every word had been carefully chosen to demonstrate genuine remorse without making excuses for his behavior. The crowd of onlookers was massive. Tourists who had planned regular visits to the palace found themselves witnessing an unprecedented diplomatic event. Many of them recognized Marcus from the viral videos and were curious to see how he would handle the situation. British government official Sarah Henderson stepped forward first to address the gathered media. "Yesterday's incident at Buckingham Palace represented a serious breach of protocol and respect for British institutions. We are here today because Mr. Thompson has requested the opportunity to make a public apology." Marcus felt his hands shaking as Henderson finished speaking and nodded toward him. This was the moment that would determine whether he could repair some of the damage he had caused to his reputation and his country's relationship with Britain. "Good morning," Marcus began, his voice quieter than usual. "My name is Marcus Thompson, and I am here to apologize for my inexcusable behavior yesterday at this location." He paused and looked directly at Private Mitchell, who remained perfectly still but was clearly listening to every word. "Private Mitchell," Marcus continued, "I want to apologize directly to you for my disrespectful demands and inappropriate behavior. You were performing your duty with honor and professionalism, and I had no right to harass you or make demands for special treatment." The crowd was completely silent, with only the sound of camera shutters breaking the quiet. Marcus had never spoken so humbly or seriously in public before. "I want to apologize to the British people for showing such disrespect to your institutions and traditions. The Royal Guards represent centuries of honor and service, and I treated that sacred duty like it was entertainment for my personal benefit." Marcus took a deep breath before continuing with the most difficult part of his statement. I also want to apologize to my fellow Americans for embarrassing our country through my actions. I represented the worst stereotypes of American tourists, and I am deeply ashamed of the impression I created. Ambassador Williams watched carefully as Marcus delivered his apology. The young man's tone and body language suggested genuine remorse, which was exactly what the situation required. I attempted to use my family's business connections and wealth to demand special treatment, and I even offered money to security officers. This behavior was completely unacceptable and showed a fundamental misunderstanding of respect, honor, and appropriate conduct. Several tourists in the crowd were recording the apology with their phones, and Marcus knew that this video would also go viral, hopefully showing a different side of his character than the previous day's footage. I want everyone to know that my behavior yesterday does not represent the values my parents taught me or the values that most Americans hold. I acted with arrogance and entitlement that embarrassed my family, my country, and myself. Private Mitchell remained perfectly still throughout the apology, but several observers noticed a slight nod of acknowledgement when Marcus addressed him directly. Finally, Marcus concluded, "I want to thank the British government and the American embassy for giving me the opportunity to make this apology, rather than pursuing more serious consequences for my actions. I have learned a valuable lesson about respect, humility, and the importance of understanding cultural differences when visiting other countries." As Marcus finished speaking, the crowd remained silent for several moments. Then, unexpectedly, a few people began to applaud quietly. The applause was not enthusiastic, but it suggested that some observers appreciated his willingness to admit his mistakes publicly. Ambassador Williams stepped forward to address the media. Mr. Thompson's apology demonstrates the kind of accountability and respect that should characterize all international interactions. We are grateful to the British government for handling this situation with such professionalism. As the official ceremony concluded, Marcus approached Private Mitchell one more time. Speaking quietly so the microphones couldn't pick up his words, he said, "I truly am sorry for putting you in that position yesterday. You handled it with more class than I did." Private Mitchell broke his formal stance just long enough to nod and say, "Apology accepted, sir." Then he resumed his position, professional and dignified as always. 6 months after the incident at Buckingham Palace, Marcus Thompson's life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. The viral videos and subsequent apology had transformed him from an unknown, wealthy young man into a global symbol of entitled behavior and, eventually, personal growth. The immediate aftermath had been brutal. Thompson Industries lost several $1 million in British contracts, though most business relationships were eventually restored after. Marcus's father implemented company-wide cultural sensitivity training for all employees traveling internationally. Marcus himself had become the subject of countless memes, late-night comedy show jokes, and academic discussions about American privilege and cultural awareness. Universities began using his case as a teaching example in international business and diplomacy courses. But something unexpected had happened in the months following his public apology. Marcus had received thousands of messages from people around the world who had made their own embarrassing mistakes while traveling. Many thanked him for showing that it was possible to acknowledge wrongdoing and learn from it publicly. He decided to use his unwanted fame constructively. Marcus started a blog called Lessons in Humility, where he wrote about cultural awareness, respect for local customs, and the dangers of entitled behavior when traveling abroad. The blog gained a surprising following among business travelers and young tourists. Marcus also began volunteering with organizations that taught cultural sensitivity to American students studying abroad. His story served as a powerful cautionary tale about the consequences of disrespectful behavior in foreign countries. Private Mitchell, meanwhile, had been promoted to corporal and had received commendations for his professional handling of the incident. He never sought publicity for his role in the event, preferring to let his military service speak for itself. The relationship between Marcus and his father had been strained for months after the incident. Robert Thompson had been furious about the damage to the family business reputation and had initially considered cutting off Marcus's financial support entirely. However, as Marcus began to show genuine personal growth and took responsibility for repairing the damage he had caused, their relationship slowly improved. Robert even began to respect his son's efforts to turn a humiliating experience into an opportunity to help others avoid similar mistakes. Marcus's social media presence had completely transformed. Instead of posting photos of expensive purchases and luxury experiences, he shared stories about cultural learning experiences and respectful interactions with people from different backgrounds. He returned to London 1 year after the incident, this time as a participant in a cultural exchange program. Marcus spent 2 weeks working with British youth organizations and learning about the history and traditions he had so carelessly dismissed during his first visit. During that trip, he visited Buckingham Palace again. This time he stood with other tourists at a respectful distance and simply observed the changing of the guard ceremony with appreciation for the tradition and history it represented. Marcus had learned that real respect cannot be demanded or purchased. It must be earned through considerate behavior, cultural awareness, and genuine appreciation for others' traditions and values. The incident that had once seemed like a minor tourist misunderstanding had taught him lessons about humility, respect, and personal responsibility that no amount of money or family influence could have provided. His story became a reminder that in our interconnected world, a single moment of poor judgment can have consequences that reach far beyond what anyone might expect. But it also demonstrated that people can learn, grow, and use their mistakes to help others avoid similar problems. Marcus Thompson, who had once demanded a salute from a royal guard, had learned to salute the values of respect, humility, and cultural understanding. The young man who had embarrassed 2 nations with his arrogance had become someone who helped others travel the world with dignity and awareness. The incident at Buckingham Palace would always be part of his story, but it was no longer the end of his story. Instead, it had become the beginning of a journey toward becoming the kind of person he should have been all along.